kind of statistically kind of tells you what you already know what's going on down here. But it's rare to see an attendance area, even when you only have 4 of them, go from last to first in 10 years. So it kind of sets the tone. 2 things here I want to go over before I go into the forecast. Those who haven't heard me before, don't let Rock Hill, South Carolina fool you. I don't have a southern accent. I was born and raised in Fort Wayne, went to Carroll High School. Lived in Indiana for many, many years, came back after my doctorate at Bowling Green, was state demographer of Indiana for about 6 years in the 80s and 90s. And my wife took a job in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and insisted I move with her. So I went down there. And this is stop 3 of a 9-district road trip in Indiana this time up here. We were in East Allen, Northwest Allen last night. We're in Jennings tomorrow night. This is literally the road show. So thank you for accommodating my schedule on this. Then these are forecasts. They are not projections, okay? A projection is where you take a variable, usually year-to-year survivorship, second, third to fourth, over a 5-year period, create an algorithm and use that number to literally project in the future. Very quick, simple, easy, cheap. And up until about the 1990s, all you had for enrollment research. The problem with a projection is it's almost never right. Because the only way a projection can be correct is what's happened the last 5 years replicates itself over the next 5 and 10. And I don't know about you guys, I hope we don't see the last 5 years anytime again in my lifetime. So, a forecast is a 2-step procedure. The first thing we do, basing off the 2020 census numbers, is do a full population forecast for each one of the 4 elementary attendance areas. 0 to 4, 85 plus, male to female, building a fertility, mortality, migration model for each one of the areas. All the variables we can lay our hands on: housing, existing home sales, age structure, housing tenure, wherever we can find, we put in the models and all that. Because the only thing that your 4 elementary attendance areas have in common, demographically speaking, is they're all part of the Lebanon School District. They all have their own unique demographic characteristics, and that must be addressed when looking at a pop forecast. The results of that population forecast then runs an enrollment forecast. So it's your current and future demographic dynamics and trends and characteristics that dictate it, not what you've done the last 5 years. So, next slide. Anytime you're doing forecasts, you have to have assumptions. These are broad socioeconomic demographic parameters, so to speak, that we use in building our models. I won't go through all of these for brevity's sake. I want to go through the top 4 though. And these are the 4 that have the highest probability of variation, i.e. error. And of course, number 1, the biggest one is B. We assume the 30-year fixed mortgage will stay between 5.5 and 7.5% in the next 10 years. It was 7.6 this morning, down from 7.8 last week. We're at the top end of this range. I think we'll get back down into this range later in this year if Jerome Powell keeps his foot off the gas. I don't think we'll go below 5.5 again. Anybody who's looking for 3, 4, 5% mortgage rates got a long wait in front of them. Those are artificially low. Why is this so important? It drives the housing market, okay? You're going to move into an area, you have to have a house, you have to have a mortgage, things like that. And the housing market right now is, to put it in a word, bizarre. Okay, we're seeing stuff we've never seen before in the U.S. And more on that when we get to new and existing home sales. But one of the issues where this is coming in is there's a lot of move-up homes being built in the Lebanon area, Lebanon School District. And kind of how the life course goes, you don't come out of college and buy a house, you rent an apartment. Married, start your family, but when your oldest kid gets to be about 3, 4 years old, you don't want to raise your kid in an apartment, you're looking for a house in the suburbs. Then you get your starter home. And then outgrow that, you want to go to the move-up home, things like that. So as long as this nice procedure keeps going along, we're in great shape. The problem right now, there's a lot of people, and this is not just central Indiana, it's all over the country right now. There's a lot of people that are in starter homes with 3.5%, 4% mortgage rates that don't want to pay a 7.5% to go to a move-up home. and that market has stalled. I mean, it's dropped in its tracks. You talk to any realtor right now, and they'll tell you the supply of homes on the market right now is the worst they've seen in 20, 30 years. Some would say post-World War II, okay? The other three, I should say, are on the next slide. Okay. We assume the district will have 170 new single-family housing units constructed. Now that's units. That's apartments, that's condos, that's townhouses, that's single-family detached. And 680 existing homes per year. I'm not worried about this number here. I think you'll hit your 170. I'm worried about that number. Add the two together, that's about 850. You need 850 households moving in. Doesn't matter if it's new or existing, they got to be moving in, all right? And just like most places in the country, new home construction, even here, is only about 20% of the housing market. National average is 10. Even over in Westfield, where they are building to beat the band, it's only 25%. Existing home sales is the backbone of your housing market. New home construction, that's easy. Open field, they're building something, 200 homes, 5-year build out scenario, you put 4 in. My dog could do that, okay? The existing homes, we have to use Zillow, RealtyTrack, Realtor.com, down to the address level, how long they've been on the market. They're scattered all over the place, okay? Whole different dynamic. You can build 300, 400 new homes a year. If you don't have that 680, if that's down to 300s like it is right now, you're not going to be growing that much, okay? People will fixate on new home construction because it's new, they're seeing something going on. These are scattered all over the place, they don't watch it that closely. But that's the one that's got the highest variation to it, okay? So when you're looking at your numbers, particularly when you come in April and May, because most people with kids move between April and August. That's where the peak of the market is. If your existing homes on the market on Zillow or RealtyTrack or Realtor.com is not sitting about 300 to 400, that's a flag. And it definitely died out the end of this season with the mortgage rates up by 8%, okay? That number I'm not worried about. And then of course, this is the state of Indiana. We have to have something about transfers. Indiana is the only state in the country that has vouchers, charters, and interdistrict transfers all going on at the same time. The only advantage to that whole system is Indiana has the best student tracking system in the country, bar none. No one has one that's good because there's 7,000 plus bucks attached to each kid, and where they're going, where they're coming from. We assume the district will continue a net 325 loss through transfer, okay? And according to the latest website, you've got 96 coming into public, 335 going out to public, and 85 going out to non-public for a net of 325. Western Boone is your biggest one. And then there's 44 to Union School Corp. Anybody who know who Union School Corp is?
Yeah.
It's that virtual school. It's a little school district out of Randolph County. Okay, they've only got 400 kids from K through 12. All right, and half of them don't even go to their own schools. Yet they've got 5,000 virtual students from all over the state. Every school district in the state has some kids going to Union School Corp. It's the scam of scams. I mean, I'm even impressed by this. Now, the fact that the state lets this persist,
They pay tuition? They pay tuition?
They get half of the state allocation.
So it's free to the parents? It's
Huh?
free to the parents? It's free to the parents?
Yep.
It's anybody.
Yeah.
There's no, in fact, they just, the state will send half of your state allotment to the school district. They're rolling in dough right now.
Because they have no assets to be worrying about.
Okay, I get it. So they get their money from the state, parents don't have to pay anything.
No, not pay anything. No, it's a great scam. And it's been going on for about 3 or 4 years now. So, but anyway, that's 44-year students are going out there. So now this number again is fluid, okay?
Actually, 85% of the union.
You've never heard about this place?
I've never heard of it.
Union School Corp? Oh, they're a legend in Indiana now. All school districts hate them. I pulled their transfer numbers up, and literally half their kids don't even go to their own schools. It's all virtual, you know. But they got like 5,000 students out there. This number again is fluid. The big one now is they just passed the law where the minimum requirement for household income to qualify for private school voucher is now $220,000 a year. One of the organizations in Indianapolis did the math on that. 96% of all households with kids now qualify for private school vouchers. So much for doing this to help the poor. So this year's numbers, we have to assume that there will be some impact of increase in the public to private transfer rate. But we don't think it's going to hit you guys that hard. So I'm still thinking that 325 number is pretty solid.
That's roughly 10% of our student enrollment, isn't it?
Mhm.
Is that pretty common? Was Noblesville and
Uh,
other districts around?
Noblesville is about
Connors?
-700.
And we're-
Carmel's about -600. Hamilton Southeast about -1600. Why so
Of
much?
course, they're so much bigger, that's, but.
No,
that's just more
they're closed districts.
Hamilton Southeastern and Lebanon?
Hamilton Southeast, Carmel, and Westfield are closed districts.
don't
You
take-
cannot transfer into them unless you're a teacher's child.
Okay, all right.
We've been pretty consistent with Noblesville.
I was trying to figure whether Lebanon is pretty average when it comes to the number of students who are transferring out.
We are, percentage-wise, I think.
Percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise, I'd say maybe a little better than average, perhaps. Percentage-wise, most districts tend to get hit harder. Suburban districts, because there's so much nearby competition, both from charters, privates, and other school districts, it tends to be a little higher in inner ring suburban areas.
Yeah.
Carmel loses a year.
But I've seen far worse.
Trader's Point.
Heritage Christian, they take a lot from Fishers.
Very, very few, however, are net gainers. Very few. And the reason for that is everybody's got parochial loss.
Beech Grove takes a ton of kids from IPS. They're a net positive.
Union School Corporation appears to be in that positive.
Hamilton Heights is a net positive. They take a lot of kids from Nolensville, HSE.
For example, I was up in East Allen last night, and their public to public, they have a net positive of 300 coming in from Fort Wayne Community. But when you put the public to private in there, they're losing 1,500. The net's negative 1,200 then. And one reason for that is Fort Wayne has the largest Lutheran school system in the country. On top of a Catholic parochial one, other private schools, there's a lot of competition up
Concordia
there.
Lutheran's a 900 student high school. It's a sizable.
Yeah.
They all live in Fort Wayne, most of them.
Yeah, you really have to look at what the competition is in the area. We took these numbers, we took a paper to the Applied Demography Conference looking at, because a lot of states are thinking about now copying we call the Indiana system and do that. Mississippi is real big on it right now. Look at the impact of it, and it's, we tend to put transfers, charters, and parochial, all our vouchers, all in the same category. Their impacts are wildly different. The vouchers and charters really only impact urban metropolitan areas because you don't have that many amount of rural areas. Transfers affects everybody. So really there's a lot of other, and then now this, we'll call the virtual transfer thing, what I call the Union School Corp phenomenon, is now a growing on that because when we went through COVID, everybody's rates went down. The homeschool went up, parochial went up, private virtual went from nothing to virtually nothing to all told. Now they've come back down, but none of those four have come back down to pre-COVID rates. And virtual, which was nothing before COVID, is now 4 or 5%, and it's not going to go away. So the market shares of how much the public schools get of their population is markedly lower than it was last decade. It probably will not go down to pre-COVID levels again. More on that later when I get to it. But anyway, those are the four variables that have the highest amount of probable error that will come into the forecast. Next slide. The population pyramid, okay, graphic representation of your district population. This is 2010, we've got 2020 coming up next, but they're easy to read. 0 to 4, that's your preschool, elementary, middle, high school. 20 to 34, we refer to as family formation ages. 80% of all births occur to women between the ages of 20 and 34 years old. When you look at the changes in number of births in an area, it's not so much change in birth rate, it's due to change of number of women in prime childbearing age. You can have a total fertility rate of 9. If you don't have women in these age groups, you're not going to have any births. So that's when you look at that number. 35, 54, these are the ages where most people have kids in school. So when we have public board meetings, about 90% of your parents are going to be in these age groups. 55 to 69 is what we refer to as the empty nest ages. Okay, this is where it gets confusing for people. You got the Smith family living down the road, been there for 20 years. 10 years ago it was mom, dad, and 2 kids. But the kids have now graduated, gone off to college, or gone someplace else. Same house, same owner. Instead of 4 people, it's now 2. Okay? And as you can see, back in 2010, we knew there was going to be a lot of empty nesting going on because a lot of people had high school. In fact, Lebanon, just like most of the rest of the areas of the country, saw the average household rate, persons per household, go from 244 in 2010 to 238 in 2020 census. Now, 0.06 doesn't sound like a lot until you multiply it by 10,000 households. Had the household size stayed the same in 2020 as it was in 2010, you would have had 600 more people counted. Now think about that, 2.44. Mom, dad, whatever the point is kids. So when you see changes in these household sizes, a disproportionately high amount of that change is under 18 population, okay? So think of it, not just 600 people, but probably 600 kids. It's one of the negative factors you have to look at. And then 70 and over, we'll call the turnover ages. You'll see a slight uptick at 62, another one at 65. But most people don't downsize till they're in their 70s. It's not retirement that triggers downsizing. It's either the death of one of the spouses or they both lose the ability to drive. And if there's one thing we know about the Lebanon School District, you got to have a car and be able to drive around here. Not that some people can really drive around here, but they have to be the ability to drive a car. So, and by the way, that intersection 32 down there, 39, where they meet in downtown, that situation cannot be allowed to persist. That has to be. I saw about 8 people almost get killed down there this morning. Anyway, I digress. You're going to have a growing number of people during those turnover ages. And again, that's the backbone of the housing market. Aging empty nesters, particularly in the urban core of the city of Lebanon, and this is where they're concentrated. That's where the big change is going to be. You have a large number of housing units that have homeowners in their 70s now. Once they start picking up, and I got bad news for baby boomers out there, you're going to die eventually. I know they hate to hear this, but it's going to happen. So they're either going to downsize or going to die. And if you look at the next slide, this is the 2020 census, okay? Here's all those people that moved out in the last 10 years, bringing kids with them, okay? But you can now see here's that other wave up there. They're now empty nesting, but you go forward 10 years, these bars are going to age in the 70s. So the number and proportion of your households that will be in turnover ages is going to do nothing but go up over the next 10 years. Now, clearly, these trends are not evenly distributed across your 4 elementary attendance areas. Next slide. This is central, okay? We've kept the bar here, the scale on the bottom the same, so you can see the relative size of the population by attendance area. And you can see here, a lot of people going in their 60s. Notice the deficit down here is 0 to 4, smaller than 5 to 9. That's because you don't have women in prime childbearing age. So you need in-migration to this one over the 5 years so that you can build this bar out so it gets to 5 to 9 by 2025. That's just a break even, okay? The next one is Harnley, okay? Got some apartments in there a little bit. Got some people, no deficit because you have young people in it, but they too are going to have an increasing number in turnover ages going into the future. Next one, Stokes. Young people, no deficit, but here's a wave going into the late 60s. Might be a little later than the other two for turnover. And then Perry Worth, which is the last, no, we don't have, oh, Perry Worth. Oh, there it is. All right, Perry Worth, the classic suburban pattern. Okay, if you look at most suburban school districts, this is what their pyramids look like, except they're building all those apartments down there, all those starter homes, and bringing all those kids with them. That's in-migration, okay? And you see, it looks nothing like the district or the other 3 attendance areas. But at the same time, a relatively small proportion aging out. This is the area that's going to be dependent upon new home construction to drive the changes. The other 3 is going to be turnover. And they're moving at different paces and have different dynamics. So that's the tricky part for Lebanon. Very, very few school districts has this issue. One we just finished up with Southern Hancock. The one, their elementary area right next to Marion County looks like Perry Worth, okay? The ones off to the east look like a rural pillar, you know? So this is a phenomenon you see frequently in suburban areas, particularly as the strong pattern. Hamilton County is just about built out now. I mean, once Westfield's done, they're not going to go up 31 much. 65 is going to be the corridor. You got economic development, you got open land, they're finally getting those interchanges done, thank God. It's here. The infrastructure's lagging, but this is where the growth is coming. I don't think it'll be like I-69 was going up towards Fisher, but it's going to be of the same type. It's going to take about 20 years.
That's where the board is wise, and we still have to do our negotiations. It reminded me, we still have to do, is their desire to do this forecast annually, because if some of the Harney Central Stokes boundaries begin to become influenced by new construction like Perry Worth is, we need to be able to keep tabs on that, because if that growth happens, we're beginning to see that some of that might, with the industry that's moving in and the open fields, et cetera, then we have to monitor whether the in-town...
I would carry that a little farther, and my concern is you have aging empty nesters up here in the Lebanon area, strong demand, mortgage rates are good, and they've got some place to move, which is one of the problems with Ellery right now. They have no place to go.
It'll be a combination of new and...
Yeah. Sitting there on a ton of equity in their homes, let's dump this puppy, go someplace else, and that schools, or excuse me, housing units you haven't had kids come out of for 20 years now starts having a whole bunch of preschoolers and every elementary. Okay, and again, new home construction is easy. You can see that. You can get a build-out scenario. You get a price point. That's a piece of cake. But that's only 15%, 20% of your housing market. The other 80, and remember, it's been clogged up now because the elderly just stopped moving during COVID. It hasn't picked up again. So not only you have the aging wave of the baby boom hitting it, you've got 4 years worth of backed up selling pressure behind it is like water behind the dam. I'm thinking when this thing breaks, it's going to be ugly, not just here, but all over the place. I'm talking about right now about a shortage of homes on the market, which is true. My concern is 25 and 26. You know, you're going to have 14, 16 million baby boomers in this country trying to downsize all at one time. It's going to be the other side, you know, and the rush to the exits will be ugly, you know. So what's going to happen first is are the youngsters going to bite the bullet and pay those 7% interest rates, or are the boomers going to die? My money is on the boomers, okay? I'm 68, we'll be here in a couple of months. All of my friends and I, we're all trying to downsize right now, okay? And we've all given up because the prices are just nuts. And my Scottish blood will not allow me to pay these kind of money. Because the thing about, if you get on Realty Tracker or all the sites like that, put a home for sale, say it's $650,000. You can see the price history on it. They bought that thing for $4.25 4 years ago. They want $650 for it now. I'm not subsidizing their greed. So that's one reason why the elderly have just backed out of the market. We won't do it, you know. So this situation will not continue beyond 2 or 3 years. Something's going to have to break, okay? In this district, it's going to break in the city of Lebanon. Perry Worth doesn't have enough elderly homeowners down there to move the needle. You get so much building going on down there. Again, two completely different dynamics going on at the same time. This is the challenge for a school district like this. So here you've got growth, but you got to look over your shoulder. Oh my God, where are all these kids coming from up here? You know, that's why that might be one reason. That's why we do evals every year. How are we doing? Okay, what's the mortgage rates doing? What's your sales rates doing? If mortgage rates go to, I'll tell you right now, if 30-year fixed goes to 8.5% next year, I'm too high. My forecast will be too high. I'll tell you that right now, because we're assuming it doesn't go above 7.5. If it went down to 5.5, I'm probably going to be too low. Okay, I'm going to be the lower end of my range there. So I'd like to tell people, I'm a demographer, not a soothsayer. If I actually knew what the economy is going to be next year, I wouldn't be doing this for a living. So,
And I assume that's not linear. If if you go to 8.5, we can't say, well, because that's 10% over Jerry's estimation, we need to lower his number by 10%. Does that?
oh no, 8.5 is a brick
That puts a
wall.
halt on it.
It's not linear, it's dropping like a rock.
Okay.
Well, I guess that would be linear, down. So, next slide. Okay. Begin from the 2020 census. 30% of your households have under 18 population. That's normal for suburban area, okay? But one of the reasons we put this up here is to show the range between the different attendance areas. So household sizes, household population, and persons per household. Now, the district's 238. Stokes is right at the district average. Harney, 236. Central's 221. Perry Worth is 257. And again, do the math on that. Well, 0.3 doesn't sound like a lot until you multiply it times 6,000 housing units, you know. Wow, that's a big number. We're probably mostly looking at kids here. So I'm trying to.
Stall for me?
Yeah, no, actually, I'm ready to go into show tunes right now. So, on the next slide, 3554 homeowners. So you're going to have kids in school, again, about a third. Over 65 homeowners, about a quarter of them. So you can see that large bubble, but not surprisingly, get this, 31 in Central, 27 in Harney, 23 in Stokes, only 20% Perry Worth. Owner versus renter, okay? 83 down to 56. This is an underappreciated variable. We call it housing tenure in demography, okay? Owners and renters have two different dynamics. Renters tend to be younger because you're coming out of college and rent an apartment. They're younger, they're still forming their families, having kids, and moving average every 2 years. Owners tend to be older because they're older, and homeowners, they tend to be wealthier, have completed their family formation and move an average every 14 years, much more static. So, and there's two numbers here. There's kids per household and there's school-age kids per household. In apartments, that number is wide, very wide apart, because if you start having kids, apartments have a lot of preschoolers in it. But again, most people don't want to raise a kid in an apartment. They tend to move out. So a lot of them don't make it to school. Homeowners, not many people go out, drop $400,000 or $500,000, $600,000 on a new house and say, hey, hon, let's have another kid. They're done. So the number between kids per household and school age per household is much closer together. Might be some preschoolers in there, probably not going to have hardly any more births going out of it. So you tend to see the full impact in single-family attached homes. It's more of a delayed impact on apartments. And the proportion of each in an area is dictated. Now, again, Perry Worth, overwhelmingly owner-occupied, whereas Stokes is almost 50-50. You have two different dynamics there. Next slide. Single-person households, about 30%, but again, a wide range. Stokes being the high and Central being in the 30s here, but Perry Worth only in the 20s, okay? And the percent over 65, again, 11.1 for the district, but a wide range, Perry Worth being the outlier. So it really is a completely different area. Next slide. Now, this is my favorite stuff from the 2020 census because we're looking at cohort sizes. In 2020, 5-year-olds, that's your kindergarten. First grade, second, third, fourth, fifth. But by 2025, or let's just do 2023, this year, this school year, no, go back. Not that far. These 2-year-olds right now are 5 years old in 2023. This is your kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. We can track what the cohort sizes are. Now at the district level, you can see, and this is a rarity for suburban areas, yours actually goes up, but we can look for year-to-year variations. A great one here is Perry Worth, 106, 114, 96, 141. So this year, slight dip in the kindergarten is expected because it's a small cohort. Big cohort going in next, oh my God, we're up 50 kids. It must be this booming growth. Well, part of it, but the other part is you just got a huge cohort going through. We want to isolate how much of this change is due to demographic factors and how much is due to things like cohort size. And
What's that word you're using, Dr. McKibben? Cohort.
cohort, C-O-H-O-R-T, cohort. It's a group of anything that has a common characteristic. The mere fact I could even spell that is a shocking thing for me. So, other ones you can see through here, Harney, 70, 92, 70, 70, 70, 70. That was just a big cohort, okay? So you're going to be able to identify these things. These are all things that kind of link up the demographic variables and isolate potential error in the forecast.
Dr. McKibben, before we move on, just help Mr. Dennis and I solve the puzzle. The 96 is this year's kindergarten, right?
Are we thinking about that right?
No, that's population.
But at Perry Worth, the 2-year-olds,
2-year-olds in
on your 2020 data, is that our kindergartens this year?
That's your kindergartners this year, yeah.
So
So that's
50 more kindergartners at Perry Worth next year, if this cohort sticks together?
Yeah, it'd be 50 more next year.
Here's the deal, so that would track, but Perry Worth is up 40 kids, right? So it's move-ins, it's not who has been there, right? Because we're up,
That was all, yeah, for this year it's all move-ins,
yeah.
okay? Next year's going to be ugly,
Right.
so,
Which leads us to that.
we do
Do we
nothing.
want to do a phased in?
yeah. You know it's coming. Next slide, we'll calculate market share, okay? This is district level. These enrollment numbers are your actual enrollments, because I'm going to steal your thunder here on that too. Okay, the red is first grade. So 6 years old in 2020, that was your first grade enrollment, and that was 253, and that's 81% of what the cohort size was, all right? Now, this is the depths of COVID, so everybody's percentages are down. So they start going up, particularly if we start seeing the return rate. So 22 is probably a better one for analysis post-COVID. You're looking at the 80s here, and the 90s, and you'll notice that the proportions go up. That's how we measure in-migration. You can tell you right there exactly how many more moved in. But they're not 100%. No school district gets 100% of their students, because you got private parochial, you've got homeschool, you've got virtual, things like that. This year, you're at 90% cohort. It's up. You always see a jump from kindergarten to first grade, and it's slightly going up in almost all of the age groups here. That's how we measure your in-migration rate annually, and it's based on your data, your characteristics, your trends, building, things like that. We don't use national or state or county or anything else. It's all built specific, not just to the district, but the attendance area too. Okay. The transfer number is probably about a third of this difference in here. That's the wild card in Indiana, okay? Because it's just the Wild West out there. When the new report comes out in December, we'll check it immediately. That's the first thing we'll look at. If it's 325 net, then that's what we assumed. If it's 300 net, I should be tracking a little low. If it's 350, I should be a little high. Yeah, so that's variable one that we look at. So this is priceless data right here, this kind of analysis. So next slide. All this information goes into building a population forecast, fertility, mortality, migration model for each area. This is the district total. Two ways to read this. You can look at an age group over time. 5 to 9 is roughly your elementary. 1,500, 1,600, 1,700, 1,900. We see a trend here. Or follow a age cohort through time. 1,500, 0 to 4 are now 5 to 9, are now 10 to 15, or 10 to 14, 15 to 19. You always see a drop from 10 to 14, 15, 19, because your 19-year-old population is off in college, and that's where they're getting counted, not where they're from. So there's always a drop off there. Median age, 38.6 going to 43. I guess the aging trend with a boom. These numbers here we'll call the components of change for the 5-year period. You'll see the births go down, not because of a dropping birth rate, but because of fewer women in prime childbearing age. The deaths go up, not because of COVID, but because of an aging population. You have more people in prime dying ages. Natural increase, excess of births over deaths goes negative. This is the demographic trend of the next 50 years. Probably, well, not 50, not 20 years at least. Even before COVID, we had 4 states and 800 counties in the U.S. with more deaths than births. We're picking up about a state every 2 years and about 10 counties a year. We already have 15 counties in Indiana with more deaths than births, starting in the west and the northwest and kind of moving east. But we're all heading there. Net migration, it's more than 600 people moving in 5 years. Yes, it's net. Number of people moving in minus number of people moving out. Your biggest in-migration flows, people 25 to 44 years old bringing 0 to 9-year-olds with them. Your biggest out-migration flow, 18 to 24-year-olds and over 70s. You got more going in than you have coming out. And then that's the change. Very solid growth. The results of this goes into the enrollment forecast, which is the next slide. Okay. Now, The analogy I like to use here is a bucket of water. If I have a bucket of water and I'm pouring water in the top and there's a hole in the bottom, as long as I'm pouring in faster than it's going out the bottom, the level will rise. But for some reason, the hole in the bottom gets bigger and it's now going out faster than I'm pouring in. Even if I keep pouring at the same rate, the level will drop, okay? Enrollment works the same way. What's the size of the first K-1 cohorts coming in versus the size of the 12th grade cohorts going out, okay? So when you look at everybody's eyes, always go to the total. Oh, solid sustained growth, up about 300. They're going, yeah, that looks a little low to me. Well, it probably would, except you'll notice that the K-1 enrollment steadily marches up. Okay, you're going to have enough in-migration, enough to make up for that shortage of birth. You know, it's going to grow. The difference is, instead of averaging about 230, 220, maybe something like that in 12th grade cohorts, you're going to have like 280, 290. The hole in the bottom of the bucket's getting bigger, okay? So what's causing this slowdown in growth, particularly past the age of 20 or a year 27, is bigger cohorts going out, you know? One reason you had 125 growth there was you only had 226, and that's one reason it slowed down this year. You had 40 more high school kids go out last year. This will be 20, it pops back up. So it's, again, that outflow is a key one. On the pre-K5, pretty solid growth. And you have to remember that 75% of the school districts in Indiana, the Midwest, and nationwide will lose enrollment in the next 10 years.
What percentage?
So you got 75% of them will lose, yeah. You guys are one of the outliers, and that's because you have a strong immigration flow. Births have been dropping for 15 years. Household size is dropping. One of my favorite stats from the 2020 census, the country grew by 22 million people last 10 years. The under 18 population dropped by 1 million through the same period. So this is unprecedented. And again, not so much a drop in birth rates, although that is a factor, but the bigger thing is there's fewer women in prime childbearing age. So your high school, however, is going to be up about 200 students. We know this for sure. And this is the most solid number in these forecasts, because 80% of this growth here in the high school enrollment are kids who already live in the district. They don't have to move in, they're already here. So barring any kind of major catastrophe where there's a massive out-migration or transfer out, you're going to see that increase in the high school. Fortunately, you've got a couple years, you have a big jump this year, but you have a couple years before the real peak of that wave hits, you know, and kind of plan for it. The immediate issue is going to be your elementaries, okay? Now this is a key demarcation line here, 2028, okay? And the reason for that is that's when the front end of the baby boom hits their 80s and the peak hits their 70s. And that's, if we're going, depending on the housing market, that's where we expect to start seeing some major changes in the housing market. By 28, by the latest. Might even happen as early as 25. So in Perry Worth, the rate and magnitude of the building is clearly going to be the dominant factor, okay? But for the entire district, it's going to be what's the existing home sales doing up in Lebanon. So you really have to keep an eye on both of them. You have two different dynamics going on. Because I will tell you one thing that we learned in spades from the 2008 crash is when the housing market softens, all those builders out there that are beating the drum and banging the parade and all that we're going to build will disappear overnight. And then it will once again be the existing home sales that carries the day. It's been that way since World War II. How'd I do? Yeah, 40 minutes, not bad for me. I have a reputation for being long-winded. The old college professor.
Question.
Sir?
Obviously, your numbers are based on the assumption that your assumptions are accurate.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
Right.
If we have something happen here that would vary from your assumptions, then your results could vary.
Yep.
So we have this situation in Boone County, which is unusual. We have potential growth here that's could be enormous. Probably won't be as much as people fear, but it could be bigger than anything we've ever experienced.
Are you referring to Lilly?
Lilly and Leap.
Yeah.
How do we, I know we don't know what will happen. We know that Lilly's going to employ 1,000 people. The
Oh,
building-
at least.
The building's under construction, they're
Right,
coming.
that's a done deal.
We don't know about Leap generally.
Yeah,
But-
I dialed down that one.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, we don't know. But if the microchip manufacturer comes to Boone County, $50 billion investment.
No.
Well, let me finish.
Let me explain on this. Okay, so far in the last year, what have we done? We got Skywater in Lafayette. You got Intel north of Columbus, Ohio. You got Micron Technologies going to north of Syracuse, New York. You've got another Micron, Boise, Idaho. You got a big one going in Arizona. There's $55 billion in federal tax, which not a dime of it has been doled out yet, by the way. Very few have really ground. Everybody's jumping on this. We're going to build these new chip plants and get less reliant on Taiwan and all that stuff. And the price of chips has done nothing but drop, and they've slowed down. I dialed back my expectations of this whole chip industry thing. It's kind of like Foxconn was when Trump was in office. The big thing they're going to put up in Wisconsin that was going to have 5,500 jobs in it. They've got 300
All right,
5 years later.
all right.
So that one take away. Lilly's a done deal.
Well,
All
and
right.
there's
Now
two other-
hold on. Let me get through my thoughts first.
All right, all right.
Look at the whole picture before you tell me that everybody's going to move to Boone County. Okay. And again, this is from my experience over 30 years. Everybody loves economic development. Nobody wants to live next to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm well aware of it.
That's that. We've done the auto plants. We've done the nanotechnology areas where they've had buildings that have thousands of jobs within. Nissan plant down in Jackson, Mississippi. We've done them all over the years, okay? Seen this. You bring 1,000 jobs in here, okay? If you get 20% of the labor force living in your school district, you've done very, very, very well. They don't put large-scale developments like that and bring people in. Anybody who runs a large corporation will tell you moving people is expensive. They're putting it there because they want to hire from the local labor pool. And people say, okay, we have 1,000 jobs coming, we have 1,000 workers move in. Yeah, that's not how the American families worked in the last 30 years. You have 2 workers in most houses. And it's your commute and what your spouse's commute is. You may have this great new job up in Boone County. If my spouse works down in Indianapolis, one of us is going to have a long commute unless we go right in the middle. The bigger one for Lebanon, and this has always been a big thing for Lebanon, if you've got one spouse working in Lafayette, one working in Indianapolis, this is the sweet spot right here. That's always been Lebanon's strong point. You're halfway in between for the commute times between when they put the new auto plant up there. By the way, that Toyota plant they put down in Greensburg, a couple years ago, and the one they put down by Gibson County, okay? We're down in both those districts closing schools because no one moved in. They had no impact on them. They've actually shrunken enrollment, So these people said, oh, these developers, particularly the people Chamber of Commerce, we're going to have all this explosive growth. You don't have the infrastructure. You don't have enough water and sewer to bring in 1,000 housing units in a year.
Well, and you know more about this than I do. There's no question about it, but I say, forget the microchip plant.
Yeah.
They're about ready to announce two big projects that
Yeah.
are coming, not Lilly.
Yeah.
In addition to Lilly.
Right.
They're data centers. They are significant.
Right.
Economic development in the LEAP district.
Right.
Okay. My point is, I don't know whether the microchip company's coming or not, but somebody's coming. The state of Indiana is putting billions of dollars into
Right.
infrastructure.
Right.
And I can't believe they're gonna do it, and it's not gonna generate any development.
Well, is it, if the companies are putting billions or millions in infrastructure, it's coming. The state, I have no faith in.
You're
Okay?
saying they won't do it or won't?
If the companies are doing it, they're coming in. It's like the Parkview, they actually paid for an interchange on I-69 just to get it done up north of Fort Wayne, because they knew that the state wouldn't do it. This state's so far behind on infrastructure improvements, it would take $1 trillion over 10 years just to bring us up to where we need to be right now.
So-
Lilly will put the money into it and they'll get it done.
So if we get some things like Lilly.
Yeah, yeah.
Forget the microchip.
Right, great.
If we get some development like Lilly.
Yeah.
Does that bring into question the numbers that you're presenting?
No,
It
there's
doesn't?
no correlation at all.
Okay,
It's gonna be
that's
wonderful
my
for your
question.
tax base.
Huh?
It's gonna be wonderful for your tax base. They're gonna pay taxes to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great thing. People correlate 1,000 jobs with 1,000 in migration. Total malarkey.
Okay, I get that.
It's malarkey, you know.
They're not
This-
all moving to Boone County.
No, they're not gonna move Boone County. You might get, like I said, if you get 20%, you're gonna be lucky. Why would they? Who wants to live next to work?
Well,
You know.
I would think most people would rather live closer to work than farther from work if they can.
Well, where's your wife work? Where's your husband work? You know? Oh, this is great. I'm gonna move. This is Ward June Cleaver mentality we got from the 1950s that dad goes to work and mom's home in a dress and pearls vacuuming. You've got two income households now. Most people, particularly in suburban areas, the wife and the husband both work. Okay? And now, if both of them work in Lebanon, yeah, they'll probably move out here, and that's that 20% you get. But this is a suburban city outside of a major metropolitan area. I'd pretty much safe bet that one of those workers works in Indianapolis someplace, and the other one may have to work out here, okay? So it's, if you think about it logically, that would make sense, okay? And also, there's a factor of where your kids are going to school. There's parent commute pattern and student commute pattern, okay? And you want to have at least one parent working in the school district where the kids go to school, and hopefully at least one of them, okay? So if those are the ones that are going to wind up here, but if they say 1,000 jobs, I'm thinking maybe 200 will actually live here. And you're making the bold assumption that they're going to move in that don't live here already. It's not, the Lilly's not going to hire anybody that already lives in the Lebanon School District.
I get that. I get that.
Yeah, so if you start breaking this down, you see, wow, the impact's not that big, you know?
So if you look back, if you take your numbers and you go to Fishers or you go to Westfield
Yeah.
20 years ago
Yep,
in Carmel, you just use what's happened over there,
mm-hmm,
and you look at how your studies turned out compared
right.
to what.
We do that with all of our projects.
Huh?
We do that with all our projects. First 3 years, we do evals. We go back in the 10-year period and do evals. It was, we're back in Westfield again because,
Well, the Hamilton Southeastern schools have certainly shown a significant increase in enrollment over the last generation.
well, up until 5 years ago, now they've flattened out.
Well, it's almost built out.
No, it's not. They've got an entire township left to build out. It's
Not
called
built.
Wayne
Hamilton
Township.
Southeastern.
That's only.
Southeastern, and that's a big point of contention because people think it's
I
part of
can't-
Noblesville. It's not. It's part of Hamilton Southeast. That's completely open. They just put water and sewer out there. But you get down to Old Fishers, their enrollment's dropping because it's all empty nesting. All the ones that moved out there 10, 20, 25 years ago are gone. That's empty nest heaven there. Plus they've got 1,600 transfers out. Carmel's built out. There's nothing left there. That's why they're all going to Westfield. You know, so they got their own issues in Carmel.
So the people who are opposed to the development of Boone County use the fact that our schools are going to be overwhelmed as a basis for the opposition. You would say that your history and your demographic shows that actually, even if we have quite a bit of this growth that they're talking about, it probably won't have a significant impact on the schools.
No. You need in my, people think that, you know, again, they go back to this mindset, if these people move in to add to what they already have, you guys are getting the outlier. Most of the school districts in Boone County don't have a 0 to 4 surplus, they have a deficit. You know, if it wasn't for the couple hundred that Western Boone's getting from you guys, they'd be dropping like a stone. Okay, they don't have near enough births out there. You guys need some growth. You know, this is, I know their fears, you know, Lebanon will become like Fishers, God help you, and I can understand that concern, but, you know, there's other things in fact. You talk about people living here, moving for economic development, it's bigger impact that you're going to Lafayette than it would be for here. Because again, this is the sweet spot for commuters. One to Lafayette, one to Indianapolis. This would be the only logical choice to have if you were a two-worker household, worked in both places.
Western Boone's wanting growth, and they're hoping to get it when the infrastructure comes to the area.
They will. Western Boone will see as much as you guys will. It's going to be spread all over the place. You know, the regional concept is the one you have to look at now. I mean, this whole thing is, well, we're going to look after our town or our school district. It doesn't work that way. You're in a metropolitan area. You got interstate highways. You know, you've got, actually have interchanges now here, things like that.
So back to maybe a couple of our phone conversations recently, the projects we have underway are appropriately addressing this moderate growth because if the projections are off and we get more than 170 of the new homes and more of the turnover and more of what Kent's referring to, we have positioned ourselves to be able to receive those students in the buildings that we have under
You know,
construction.
we were talking about these commercial projects, which may or may not happen, and we don't know where these people will live. But let's assume, for the sake of conversation, that Steve Henke actually builds Waterford, okay?
Yeah.
2,000 acres of home, primarily residential, but some commercial.
Right.
If that actually happens, that would have an impact on our enrollment, would it not?
10,000, that'd be 10-year build out, right?
Yeah, I'd say.
Okay. $1,000 homes?
Well,
About
I
3,000.
I don't know. He's thrown out numbers. Let's say 2,000.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, people throw these numbers out, particularly developers, you know. We're going to do this, you try to get them their feet to the fire for specifics, they don't come up with anything. It's always dialed down. But let's give them 1,000 housing units over 10 years. It's 100, okay? I got 160 in my assumptions for the district. Most of them go down Perry Worth. So that's just what I got assumed right now. I'm not worried about you hitting that 160 number. I'm worried about that 860 or 680 number of existing home sales. Don't worry about the new home, they'll build it. But that's only 15% of your housing market. You need all these baby boomers up here that have no kids in the house in the district for the last 20 years to move out and let new young families move in. That'll have a bigger impact. And also, there's a great rule in demography. You can have money, you can have kids, but you can't have both. Anybody's parent knows what I'm talking about. So as price of home goes up, household size goes down, okay? Big thing touting around the country right now, we're all building these new apartments, townhouses for young professionals. They got kids in them. We're seeing yields like 0.05 in these new apartment complexes. We're going to make something affordable housing, you know, so bring young families in. Well, If they do have kids, they're preschoolers. And again, no one wants to raise their kid in an apartment, so the kid gets 5 or 6 trying to go someplace else. Hopefully, they'll move to an existing home up in Lebanon. That's the hope, okay? These are the dynamics that are really going to affect your enrollment. So jobs here, well, you know, if they don't build Lilly, you'd still be growing, okay?
Well, that's the thing, it's well beyond Lilly. I mean, the state
Oh, yeah.
has already sunk how many billions into land itself. I mean, they own thousands of acres that
Yeah.
they're going to turn over. And some of it is going to be residential as well. There's a new town almost being built as part of the LEAP district, not just the microchip
Yeah.
and they're going to be investing billions of dollars in water from Lafayette, right? At
lot
least
of
that's the plan.
A lot of it depends upon where these people want their children to go to school.
Yeah.
If they've got choices of any number, Brownsburg, Avon, Westfield, Lebanon, Sheridan, Western Boone, if they can work, they can live wherever they want their kids to go to school, and they're still within 20 miles of their workplace.
That makes his point as well.
Yeah, you bring, just because they move in, doesn't mean they're gonna show up in your schools. You know, this is Indiana,
They may
folks.
work here, but they may live in Brownsburg, or they may
They
live in
could.
Westfield, or they
Yeah.
may live in Zionsville.
And even if they live here and work here, they still may not want your kids in their school. They may go to parochial and privates.
Many of my neighbors' kids go to Brebeuf now.
Yeah,
So it could be the very, very benefit of the large tax base without the burden of.
exactly. I mean, I see good things out of this, you know? It,
We can appropriately.
I mean,
operate
without the
buildings and
cost
renovate
associated.
for
you're,
foreseeable future.
you're building now, what you're doing right now, John, that's catch up. You know, you're bringing everything up to speed. You'll be in great shape where you're going right now with the plans you've got, okay? You're on top of it. The distribution, that's your boundary thing you'll work out later. Now that's the challenge, you know, where to draw those lines, because they get, I think we've shown here, if nothing else, the demographic trends, Lebanon, Prairie Worth, are completely different, okay? And you have to take those into consideration when drawing any kind of boundaries. And they're going to stay different. So, and I think that's the real challenge there. But facilities-wise, I think you guys are in great shape. You know, you've actually, because infrastructure always lags population change and growth, okay? And the education system is infrastructure. Just like roads, water, sewer, things like that, you got seats for your kids in schools. And it always lags pop change, always. Well, your transportation, your water and sewer infrastructure lags worse than your schools. That's a rarity. Usually it's the other way around. So I think you guys are in good shape. I can't give you a much better plug than that, John.
So we just got to be willing to be flexible within the buildings of adjusting class,
Bingo.
how many kindergartens we have, and then follow those through the first grade, second grade.
Correct.
Be adjusting within
Yep.
the space.
Yep.
That's exactly
When
the
we
key
go to our
point.
next phase and we're talking to Mr. Cropper, PIS, which is overlaying the yield studies for single-family homes, apartments, et cetera, over what Dr. McKibben's doing to help us with that boundary work.
Yep.
Then we look at the percentage of what percentage those elementaries are full, projected to be full when we open them, and that gives us those buffers within those buildings, and that'll be the next series of conversations we have
Yeah.
around it. Yep. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. If there's any other questions, John, you know how to get a hold of me, all that good stuff. Are you a Steelers fan, sir?
Yes, I am.
My wife grew up outside of Pittsburgh and is a fanatical Steelers fan.
I grew up in Wheeling, West Virginia.
Okay, she went in Johnstown, that's where she's at. I, however, am a lifelong Detroit Lions fan.
Sorry.
And,
Years of hardship.
yeah, she counts Super Bowl rings and all that. I count number of playoff wins in my lifetime, so. It's been cruel, but this year may yet be my year,
They're
so,
good. They're good.
before I die.
Maybe 500 again won't make the playoffs.
Let's get past first round.
All right.
With that,
For any other questions, do we need to?
Oh, I better take this
on the
off.
board doing,
Mine.
we have a couple other things to discuss.
I am gonna have to be getting myself,
Okay,
but,
we can have some, if you don't mind, maybe the next, I don't mind having that conversation in a regular meeting, talking about the use of the building, if you would be so inclined to do that.
Well, I'm a little reluctant to give you a lot of real specific legal advice when the camera is on.
That's right.
And somebody could review what I said.
Sure. So we can.
I
we can
think
get
you
these-
are, I think you are able to convert Central to another school purpose legally. Now, there's some things that we have to do to make sure.
And some other purposes that are also mentioned in the law as well.
Yeah, but I don't think you should be afraid that you're gonna have to sell Central to the charter school for $1.
Gotcha.
If you do what you're talking about doing, I think you're okay.
All right, excellent. Thanks again, Dr. Kim.
maybe we should use all these data centers that have online classes here.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
There's some rules around that I will talk about later.
Be the next union. That's crazy.
It's so,
Probably not at the same
there's
time.
so many.
It is, isn't it?